Okay, is this the button I press to go live? This is going to be an iterative process. Alright, what's up, party people? It looks like I figured it out. Welcome to my studio. Put your hands in the air. Can you hear me from back here? Oh, I've got to write a comment. Okay, I'm going to add my own social media handles in the comments. I guess I should put my name in there as well so you can figure out who I am. We'll go from there. Okay, good. Akshata says she can hear me. Hi, Danny. Hello, everyone. Nice to see folks joining in. Here you are in my studio. So my name is Marjan Verstappen. It's spelled M-A-R-J-A-N, but the J makes the Y sound like Bjork or Johannesburg or something like that. And I don't know, I sort of feel like, I don't know who's going to join or how many people are going to join. I guess it's 2 now. Maybe I'll wait another minute before I start really launching into my practice, because I guess I'm an art teacher. I've been doing classes and arts activities with seniors and with an after-school group at Arts Etobicoke now for I guess about 1.5 years. And I think I really enjoy engaging with children and seniors, well, for many reasons. I mean, I learn a lot about myself and I learn a lot about what's going on in the world, and I think that's what draws me the most to making art with communities, is that I get to engage all of my humanity. And I like to spend a lot of time here in my studio with the door closed and with my favorite podcasts on and making the art that that drives the things forward that I care about. But I also like to be out in the community and talking to people, and I find the two really inform each other a lot. This is great, but I can't see any questions that are posting. Maybe I'll just come up and look. But if I don't answer your question, you can just write your questions in all caps. Maybe that's how we do it. I don't know. I just wanted to give you a wide view. Then yeah, if you write your questions in all caps, you can do that if you're welcome. So I mean, for the past since COVID-19 began, I've been teaching. I guess they're not after school. I guess after school classes on Zoom for kids. I miss teaching them in real life. I also have been making YouTube videos for our seniors group that is called Crafting in Quarantine. I think we're up to episode 18 right now. It's been a long haul, hasn't it? I'm sure we all feel that way. And I make let me think. I guess the real challenge about doing community arts in quarantine is that, when we're in the studio, I work at the studio in Cloverdale Mall that Arts Etobicoke has set up, the studio and gallery, and I really miss the materials that we have. And it's been challenging and also kind of fun to be making arts activities for people at home, and I've been thinking about what people can use around the house to make lots of different kinds of art and join in the conversation in that way. So for example, and I found that there's things that we can do at home that we can't do in the studio as well, which has been fantastic. Like, I think a really fun activity that I did with the seniors group was that we made our own plastic bags by ironing together lots and lots of plastic bags, because everyone's got an iron at home, and everyone's got, I mean, if you're anything like me, you've got 1 million plastic bags at home. So, but we don't have 20 irons in the studio that we can share with everyone. So that was there's been fun things about making art for communities when everyone's at home, or making art with communities. I don't know anymore. How about I tell you about my art practice? Can you still see me if I sit down? I guess so. So my art, I guess I need to introduce myself a bit more. I'm from New Zealand, and I grew up in the central South Island of New Zealand, kind of on a farm, on a sheep farm. And I'm sure that when you hear about New Zealand, you hear about all the nature, and I guess I grew up deeply connected to nature, but also deeply interested in how the impact of industrial agriculture, and by that I mean farming, has shaped my perception of nature and what I understand as nature. And so I guess I was really, really curious growing up about why some things are valued because we can make money off them, and some things are valued because they're wild and beautiful, and sort of, especially in New Zealand and to some extent here, they have a sense of, it was as it should be. I grew up on lots and lots of farmland, and it was all irrigated and very regulated, and there was trees where people wanted trees, and there's grass where people want grass, and there's cows and sheep everywhere. But if we went into a national park, then there'd be forest. And I would always be curious about, it seems such an obvious question, but I was always curious about, why is there forest here and not there? And if there was, these are kids' questions, but if there was forest where the farm used to be, what happened to it, and where did it go? And I guess in my art practice, I'm still very, very interested in those questions. Because I think that, at least as someone who's a European settler in New Zealand, and then also in Canada, and by that I mean I'm not Indigenous, my family is from Holland and from the UK, we don't talk a lot about what the land was like before we came here, or what happened to it when we came here. And so I guess we just sort of, it changed about, 200 years ago or something, and then we don't really talk about it. And so I guess I'm trying to understand for myself in my art practice about what happened to that land, and why is it still changing, and what the long-term impacts of that are now. And some people call that the Anthropocene, which is this, a term that geologists talked about a lot, and still talking about a lot, which is where the impact of humans on the Earth has become a new geological era, which means that if scientists or aliens, I like the idea of aliens better, if aliens were, arrived on Earth in, a couple of 100 million years' time, because geological eras last a really, really long time, that they would see the impact of human activity if they looked at our geological record from this time. And to me, this just blows my mind. I don't even, it's terrifying, and it's fascinating. So I guess I'm really interested in that, and particularly interested in how that comes to be. And I look at that in a bunch of different ways in my practice. But I'm going to show you some art now. And I guess I want to start with this drawing. So, see, my camera isn't great. I'm just going to move this a bit closer. Hold on. So this drawing is a sort of a spaceless, it's sort of spatially ambiguous, and I have some bigger drawings. They're in storage right now. I couldn't dig them out. But a few years ago, I was drawing a lot of maps, and I was trying to understand how the Earth is sort of mapped and calculated. And so I was drawing some things, and then I wanted to draw a map that sort of showed a relationship to time, or a relationship to sort of an interiority of land, and I don't know, I'm not explaining this very well. Or like at least if you were going to plunge between the folds of a map, then maybe you would see this view on the world, which is one that doesn't really have a top or a bottom, just has a bunch of folds and has seeds in it, and has, this sense of anticipation for growth and this huge capacity for life, and also a huge capacity for healing and renewal, and many layers to it, and is immensely old. And so I don't know, I guess I want to show you this drawing first because I think it's articulated better in some sculptures that I'm making right now that I'm very excited to show you. But I don't know. A lot of my sentences just seem to be ending in ... But part of this interest I have in the Earth and in the impacts of colonization upon ecosystems stems from what I understand of plants and of introduced plants and wild plants in general. And I have a series here that is about introduced, I guess it's a mixture of plants. I wanted to get to know the plants better in Ontario, specifically, or in southern Ontario, because I moved here about 8 years ago, and it's taken me a while to gain an understanding of the wild plants, the weeds that we see every day, and learn about what they're for. And to me that's quite important because growing up in New Zealand, I was very, very close to those things. And also just a way, now I've moved to this huge city, which is very, very new for me. And I was trying to find a way to connect with the nature I saw around me. And at the same time, I wanted to deepen my understanding of what it is to, as a human being, to understand your place in a system that's made up of many other species' needs, and how the things around us that we take for granted serve the needs of other species. So I made these copper plates. So they started as botanical drawings, and if you go to my Instagram, you can see a lot of my botanical drawings, which is another thing that I teach in a community setting. But I made these, these are perfectly circular copper etching plates, and if I bring them closer, maybe you can see what's on them. I'm just going to hold it really, really still. You can also see the reflection of my phone. That's pretty cool. So this is a image of a goldenrod plant, and but it's been drawn as if it's from the perspective. So normally when we draw a botanical illustration, we draw the silhouette, the side view of the plant, so we can see its shape. But I drew these looking down at the plant, which is from the perspective that a bee would see them from, or a pollinating insect. And then, and I'm sorry I can't do this for you today because the lighting in my studio is wrong, but you can go on if you go on my Instagram, you can see it, that these are the ink in the grooves in this plate, because it's an etching plate, so it's been acid etched, and then the acid bites into the grooves, and that's how you make a print. But I'm not a printmaker, I'm a sculptor, so I was interested in the plate. And the plate is inked up with ultraviolet sensitive ink, so when I shine a light at this, it glows purple like a neon sign, but it has to be very, very dark. And the reason for that is that this is how pollinating insects see flowers. So I wanted to make this work that was beautiful to humans and also had something that it's very, very hard for us as human beings, the human eye, to see. And down the bottom here, yeah, it's invisible. There is the botanical name of the plant written backwards. So, and I wanted to give the idea that this is a partially finished work. We only see part of it, and then the species that rely on this plant that we consider a weed are also rely on it in other ways and have a relationship to it and an understanding of it that we do not have. Beach bum figure skater, thank you for your question. I teach botanical illustration at Cedar Ridge Creative Center in Scarborough, and hopefully soon at Nielsen Park Creative Center in Etobicoke. Can I show you another one of these? I'll show you my favorite. So this is, can you guess which plant this is? This is Queen Anne's lace, which is why it is so very lacy. So it's done in the same way. And it's also ultraviolet sensitive. I'll hold it from back here, maybe you can see the whole thing. Yeah. So it's possible to make prints off these, but I see them as finished objects as they are. They have a sort of a possibility of things being made. Does anyone have any questions about that? Because I want to go back to talking about land in New Zealand, for heaven's sake. So if you want to ask a question about my botanical illustration practice and its sort of science fiction bend, then I don't know, I'll pause for a minute. Yeah, I don't know what it's like at your place, but my studio doesn't have AC, so I'm just gonna take a moment to stay hydrated. Okay, so I was talking about how when I was a kid, I was extremely curious about what happened to the land and what happened to the farmland when European settlers first arrived and colonized. And what I learned, it's a very interesting story, after I did some digging around, because part of what makes New Zealand unique, and perhaps maybe you've heard some about this, is that it has very, very unique plants. The plants that existed there don't exist anywhere else in the world. So when Europeans brought their plants over from Europe, they brought them over, and there's a very, very distinct sort of line that you can draw, especially around where I lived, where there's one ecosystem on one side and another ecosystem, and there's sort of this line where you can cross between the two, but they don't sort of mix that much. And I was curious about the history of these plants coming over and how, because there's also some very, very annoying weeds that just sort of came along for the ride and no one intended for them to arrive, like thistles and stuff that farmers get really, really annoyed at, but now they're here and no one can get rid of them. And so I was researching that, and what I learned was that when there was this sort of huge rush in the 1840s between the 1840s and the 1860s, because so many people were coming and they wanted lots and lots of land, and there wasn't a good understanding about what land was actually fertile. There was kind of an assumption that if there was forest on the land, it must be fertile, which isn't often the case. So they just burnt a lot of the forest. Like, I think about 90% of the bush in New Zealand was burnt, regardless of what quality of the land, whether the land underneath was farmable. And then what they did, because they didn't have a clear idea of what would grow there or like an understanding of climate, was that they they'd lay down this particular kind of grass seed called bushburn mix, which was meant to be, which was specifically for planting on forests that had been burnt. So it was a very, very particular mix that of lots and lots of seed that had been imported from Europe, from the UK specifically. And so I wanted to make some sculptures that, and it's not a grass seed that's used anymore, but mixed in with it, it had a lot of the weed seeds that, and I don't mean that kind of weed, but that that are now, you know, really, really problematic weeds in New Zealand and here as well, I think, because they just sort of, you know, they just sort of along for the ride everywhere. So I wanted to make some kind of, I guess what I was talking about earlier with this drawing is that it has this kind of, because it doesn't have a flat picture plane, it's not showing you, it has sort of an ahistoric perspective on it. That's what I'm trying to get at anyway. We'll see how it goes. So I wanted to make something a bit like geological strata that was man-made and that was sort of spoke to this huge impact on climate that that humans have made, and particularly European colonizers have made on the world. So I've made these. I've made these concrete mixtures that are a mixture of concrete and clay, and then I dig the clay out of them until they have these kind of craters inside. Yeah, this one's split right down the middle. And these are maquettes for, I imagine these being much, much larger, but because I'm a sculptor who works in a small studio, I make small things first and then I make them larger. So sometimes they break in half like that. And what I really wanted to do today was, what's really fun is I cast these in these little rubber baby toys from Dollarama and then peel them open and then I can show you what's inside. So I thought maybe that was the exciting fun thing I could do with you today. So I'm going to do that. Question from Beach Bum Figure Skater. I don't know much about the Māori, but do any of them live off the land? I'm curious about their land use practices. Yes, and it's a mix. And many Māori farm, many Māori live in cities. And there is a push in recent years to return to eating and finding food in the bush. I think that lots of those knowledge practices have been, you know, moved to the side because so much of the ecology there was damaged that there's lots and lots of things now in the bush that are endangered, so they're not, they can't be eaten and hunted. I know that kai moana, which is seafood, is a big part of, you know, as it is in New Zealand culture as a whole, but also in Māori culture, of collecting and eating shellfish and seafood. Hold on, I'm just pulling this off. So this has got a huge chunk of clay, and then the rest is shiny concrete. And what I like about doing this is that, how I do this is that I cut a little hole in this ball, and then I put the clay in, and then I pour the concrete on top. And it's marbled concrete, so it's two different shades of concrete. And before it dries, I can break it open, and I can dig out some of the clay on the inside, or I can soak it and then the clay falls out and it gives me these beautiful cracks and crevices. And my plan is for this, is to, once I've dug it out, is to pack it in with some soil and then remake the bushburn, oh, loud car, and remake the bushburn mix that was the historic mix that was oversown over so much land in New Zealand, and regrow it so it's coming out of some of these, you know, cracks and things, like it's breaking out of a shell and I guess it's hard to articulate what exactly. I sort of have to see it before I tell you what. I don't know, sometimes it's hard to. I guess I want to sort of bring people's thoughts to our relationship with time and understanding of how there are like deep histories underneath the soil that we take for granted, but also within the soil, you know, amongst this mixture of, you know, old grass seed and burnt forests, there are, you know, hard forest seeds from the old forest that if we leave them alone, they come back. So I want, to me, these are like sort of hard seeds that contain all of that history in a way that, in a sort of a non-linear way, or in a way that perhaps people would understand if, you know, when the aliens, maybe, I don't know, sometimes I feel like I just make art for people in 100 million years. But like, so that they will understand the history of what happened in these places. Alright, I'm gonna show you another one of those. I've got another one here that I'm gonna open for you. It's like one of those unboxing videos, except. So you want to see something that's never been seen before? This one's nice and shiny. Light's not great. Okay, so the next step is to see which one of these break open. Yeah, this is why my studio gets kind of messy, but I'm going to just smack these together and see which one cracks. Ooh. And then I'll get my handy dandy clay digging tool. So now I kind of like that better than the perfect sphere. It's like an eggshell, but fossilized. Maybe a dragon egg. Maybe I've just been watching too much Game of Thrones this quarantine period. So it has this kind of like hardness and fragility, and it sort of, you know, I guess in geologic terms they call like an instability, or a I don't know, words. So I guess, I don't know, it's been 25 minutes. Do you have anyone have any more questions? Anything they want to talk about? See if I can break this one open anymore. Oh yeah. Check it out. It's like Easter, except with cement. Look at the inside of that one. Question from Akshata. Could you talk about your paint dropping art? I'm not sure. Can you be more specific? Hold on, I'll get back to that question. Leslie JS, do they all come out so beautifully? Thank you, that's very kind. I hope so. I find it beautiful. I mean, it's just raw clay and cement. But what I love, it's actually porcelain, it's not clay. But what I love about the raw clay is the sort of the cracks and the fissures and the kind of natural whirls that it creates. So thank you for that question. Danny says, have you felt your practice shifting within the changes that came because of COVID? Yes and no. I think that a lot of the questions about sovereignty and law and freedoms and rights that we take for granted have been questioned in the past couple of months, because of Black Lives Matter and because of just that, our entire society has been deeply shaken. And I think that has made, in a general way, it has made the things that I ask more urgent. But it hasn't changed the direction of my practice that much, no. But also that I actually moved out of my apartment for like 3 months, so I've been making art in a bunch of different places. And so that has been an upheaval for sure. Oh, and also that, every show that I had this year was cancelled. So yeah, there's been a lot of movement, but it hasn't changed the direction of my practice, just sort of changed what I've been working on this year. Beach Bum Figure Skater, yes, classes at Cedar Ridge will be back in the fall, and I'll be teaching botanical illustration on Monday afternoons and Monday nights if the classes fill up. Anyone else have any questions, or do you want to see anything again? Do you want me to just sort of stand silently and hold something up so you can take a look at it? I've got some cleaning up to do down here, that's for sure. No! It's in the studio. Okay, well, if there's no other questions, I think we can roll out. And so you can see me on, well, if you have kids that want to make art, that are between, I don't know, 6 and 9, then they can see me at 4 p.m. on Thursdays. And if you're bored and you want to make some art, then you can see me every Thursday on YouTube with Arts Etobicoke. Or you can go and look at my back catalogue of arts and crafts that I've done during crafting and quarantine. And you can contact me via my Instagram or from my website. I guess I can put my email. You can email me as well if you have more questions. I'd love to talk about my art practice. I also just want to say huge thanks to Arts Etobicoke for doing all this programming to support the Etobicoke community and support artists in Etobicoke through this, really rough time we're all going through. And I really appreciate the programming they're doing and the, support they're giving to the community. I think that, everyone's benefited from that a great deal. And yeah, that's all. So thank you very much. I want to give you a round of applause for being a wonderful audience. And this is the part where I forget I'm supposed to end the Facebook Live. I guess I just click the end button up the side. But yeah, thanks for being a wonderful audience.